Hello and welcome to Metro Home Theater Tech Tips. I'm Brett McCall.
I'm Adam Rogers.
And welcome aboard. So what do we got today, Adam?
So we've got an interesting, good timing for that, huh? We've got an interesting video for us today. We've got an interesting show. We are going to be talking about camera lenses and the importance of picking the right one for what you're trying to accomplish.
Can I replace my lenses?
You can. You can. There's a surgery for that. So
I need it.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, what is today's sponsor?
Today is sponsored by the letter L for the L that's on his forehead. No, I'm kidding. No, it's actually sponsored by lenses today, since we're going to be talking about lenses. Specifically, we're going to be talking about lenses, but it's sponsored by one particular unit. This is our SPY PTZ BWIP 5. Did I get that right? I might have gotten that wrong. But it's our Bullet PTZ camera, which has
the low-profile PTZ camera.
No. This is the Bullet style.
Yes,
which gives us 5 times zoom as well as a full PTZ.
But it is much smaller than that giant circular thing.
We'll give you that. It's definitely smaller than that. So definitely check out that piece. It's on the website. We'll get the correct model number for you and everything. But check that out. It's a great piece. It's got 5 times zoom. There's also the one that he's talking about, which is the dome style. That one has a 22 times zoom. So it's you're able to get way up in there.
And that's analog zoom.
It is, correct.
That's lens zoom, not digital.
Correct, yeah, exactly. So you are actually keeping the same quality of image.
And as we get into lenses, you'll understand why a lens zoom versus a digital zoom is so important.
Right, and you'll actually see that as we talk about that today. So we've got a really cool thing set up here. And first and foremost, I do want to say that anybody who is watching the episode today, thank you so much for checking in with us live. As always, if you have any questions during the show, please drop them into the chat below. If you are checking us out after the fact and you're watching a recording of this, please leave your comments and questions down in the comment section. We always track that and we do respond to that. With all that to say, give us a thumbs up and give us a subscription. We were, as of this morning, we were 1 subscription away from 800 subscribers. So it would make us feel really good if we got that one more subscription to make us, take us over that edge. Well, maybe more than one. More than one would be nice. So subscribe, like, share.
I need my new jet. Please subscribe.
Also, like us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, and follow us there. So, all that to say, I guess we'll go ahead and jump right in.
Okay, because as I'm looking at this, I'm going to make some assumptions, because you drew out this wonderful piece of artwork.
You want to put it up?
Whoop.
Where are you at?
Wrong one. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We'll go ahead and do this here. We'll go to 3.
There we go. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
As I'm looking at this beautiful piece of artwork that you did earlier, I'm going to assume these are the zoom fore and aft, and this is the focusing fore and aft.
You can read. Look at you.
Well, no. I just. Oh, it does say zoom and focus.
So yeah. So
I should have used a stabilizer.
Yeah, right. I drew this out here as a way for what we're going to be talking about today. I do go off of money. So if you want me to come in and draw something for you, you can pay me to come in and I'll draw it for you. I do a very good job with that.
There's a word for that.
Well, yeah, I forgot what it was. Is what it comes down to.
But I'll be happy to facilitate.
Thank you.
As long as I get a cut.
There you go.
There's a word for that too.
There's there. So with this here, this is what we were going to be talking about today. Now this drawing here, come to find out, I actually found this online and I drew it out for our use here today. This is actually a little bit backwards from what we're going to be looking at for surveillance lenses. However, in most cases, this is basically what's happening. In ours, it's the lenses of a surveillance camera are going to be much simpler than this. But this is what you would see on like a photography camera lens or a video camera lens. So this is the general design for that. What I'll do is we'll show you this here and we'll talk about the different parts, and then we'll erase this and I'll draw what it looks like inside of a surveillance camera. So we'll switch back over here to us. So when we are talking about surveillance lenses and lenses in general, the main purpose of that lens is to take in whatever it's being given for the view, convert it down to the point where it can get to the focal point or the sensor at the correct angle and everything else, so it can pick up the most picture or however it's designed to pick that up. That's the purpose of the lens, because you can't take just a regular sensor, and I'm going to switch over to camera 4 here. You can't take just a regular sensor. Look at that, huh? So inside that green area there, that's going to be the sensor.
That's the CCD sensor.
That's correct. So what that does there for us is that's actually what needs to capture the light coming in through the lens. And so what the lens is going to do, and you can tell that the size of that is much, 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 much smaller than the actual lens itself. However, what needs to happen is the lens needs to take all the light that's coming in through it and focus it down on that little black spot there in the middle of the green. in order for us to see a picture. But it has to do it in such a way so it's not so fuzzy when it comes in. So how it does that is it's going to take all of this information here. We'll start here. So the light comes in, and in most cases, when you're looking at a camera for video or for photography, you're going to be having this focus lens here at the front. And what happens there is the light will come in, and this will help to focus it before it gets to the zooming lens. And again, it's a little bit different when it comes to surveillance cameras, and it varies from camera to camera and lens to lens, but in most cases you will have a focusing lens and a zooming lens. In some cases you'll have what's here. This is a stabilizer lens setup, and what it will do is it will take all of this here, because with our eyes we will be taking the light from our eyes and going down to a specific point like this. So the light's coming in like that, and when it comes in, our eyes will focus that down to the back of our eye into one point in most cases. So what needs to happen here is we're going to actually be converting that. Instead, for our eyes, it's going to be coming in and hitting one flat panel at the back of that, which is that sensor. So what the stabilizer is doing is it's actually taking all that light that's coming in at an angle, and instead it's keeping it straight across so it hits that sensor and collects as much data
Handling
as
the
possible.
diffraction.
Exactly. So that is essentially how this will work for any kind of camera system through there.
Okay, can I borrow the pen a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's cover some basics on this. And it's been a while since I've done my photography, but
Sure.
let's see if we can do this.
Sure.
So we've got the data from outside, and as it starts to come in, it tends to want to narrow. Now, as it's narrowing, what we're doing with the zooming lenses at this point is determining what area of that video we're watching.
Right.
And so essentially, when you adjust this lens fore and aft, it is determining where on that focusing parameters we're catching. So
Right.
as this lens moves forward, we're catching a larger area. As it moves back, we're catching a smaller area.
Reverse. So as you move further back, you're actually winding up with a wider
With the wider, 'cause it has
angle.
time to
Correct.
expand
Yep,
more.
Yep, exactly. And then versus further out that way, we narrow it down.
We narrow it down. But the advantage
Exactly.
of doing it with the glass lens versus digital is we're giving that part of the focus 100% of the picture.
Right.
Whereas when you're looking at digital, it's all the way back here. So we're taking a small part of that picture and just blowing it up,
Exactly.
which will add artifacts and other issues that this will not.
Right. So when you are looking at, like Brent is saying, when you are using the digital zoom, what's happening is the focus hasn't changed for the glass or anything else. So everything's coming in and hitting that one sensor at that point. So you've got this amount of space on that sensor, but you're trying to zoom into an area that's only that large on the sensor. So instead, what happens is all of the megapixels or the pixels that the sensors that pick it up in that one area are now being blown up, and so you get a lower quality image. So that's why it's important to have a high quality or a zoom camera or something else to where you can
And
set it to where you want it to be.
Let's take, for example, the cameras you mentioned at the beginning.
Right.
One had a 5x mechanical zoom, lens
Right.
zoom, and one had a 22x lens zoom.
Exactly.
So the advantage of the 22x lens zoom over the 5 is just the ability to narrow down to a much smaller portion of that picture with no artifacts, no deformation, no loss of quality. In fact, that little bitty part of the picture is the only thing that's filling the screen.
Right.
Whereas when you do a digital zoom, we're taking a small picture and blowing it up to fill the screen.
Exactly. So that's why you get that pixelation look. So if you were to take your phone, actually your phone is a really good example of this. Most phones do not have a motorized lens inside of them in order to get that, zoom in capability. Some of the newer ones do, which is kind of cool. But if you were to take that and you were to zoom in with while you're using the camera, it looks grainy. It looks wrong. It looks like it's just muddy and everything else. So that's why that's what's happening. You're actually zooming in on the pixels that are being captured by the lens itself. So,
Which is why SLR lenses, if you're doing a zoom, become so large, because you want to
Yes.
collect as much of the light as you can and make a small portion of that as large as you can.
right. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to have with us here a really good example for it would be like when you look at the old pirate ship or the pirate telescopes when they put it out there and they're looking far away and whatnot, trying to see far distances. The closer that something is to them, the shorter that their telescope is, because they can see wider. But when they want to see further and further away, so there's an island way out there and they want to see further out there, they extend it out much further. because then at that point they've narrowed it down to that one area, which means that all the light that's coming in from that one small area is hitting their eye.
The field of view.
The field of view, exactly. And so at that point, you're essentially creating an easier way to view further away, because you're just opening up that space
And
to your eye.
where this applies to video surveillance is selecting the lens combination for your application.
Right.
If you need to look at tags on the back of cars,
A narrow field is much more important.
narrow field of view. You also want a very small perspective, meaning you don't want to focus a large area.
Right.
If, however, you want to cover a large area,
Yep.
you need not just a wide field of view, you also need, basically, once you get past 20 feet, the focus does not change.
Right. Yeah, because it's all going to look basically the same. So what I did here was I actually took apart one of our cameras, and I wanted to get down
In
to the
many
lens
pieces.
itself. Yeah, they're all, watch the screws over there too. They're all over the place. So we went ahead and took apart one of the cameras that we have here, because I wanted to show what the lens itself is going to look like. There's the leftover bits and pieces for it. I promise I'll put it back together. I'm not going to promise that it's going to work when I'm done with it. So we'll talk about that later, I guess. But we'll go over here to number 4. So this is actually the inside of the lens. Well, not the inside, but this lens is all that's inside of the camera. So normally what would happen is you would have the light sensor itself here at the end of it, and all the light's going to be coming in here at this side here for the lens itself. And we'll turn this here so you can see it. Now everyone's looked through binoculars before, and this is essentially what binoculars are, just lenses for your eyes to be able to view further and further away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you here what's going to happen. If I can
Sure
get it
you
there.
are.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. So you can see there the lens is actually, from the inside, is moving in and out. So our drawing is actually backwards for what our cameras are
there's
doing
fewer
for
elements.
our surveillance. Correct. There's fewer elements. Correct word, by the way. I learned that today thanks to Kyle. Kyle taught me the correct word for the pieces inside of a lens are called elements. So yeah, I didn't know that today, so thank you, Kyle, for that. But our drawing is actually backwards. So what we have to do instead, I'm going to erase my beautiful drawing here, but luckily it is recorded forever onto YouTube.
For posterity.
And I'm going to do this here, like so. All right, so when we are looking at this, what we have, instead of having the focus lens on one side, what we're going to do instead is we are going to have, I'm going to go to 3 instead. We're going to have our zoom lens out here first. So the light coming into the zoom lens will be like so. Then after that, it's going to change the way that this is coming into our, and I don't believe I have this correct for the angle of it. However, the idea is that it's now changing that light to get to the sensor at this point. So with a surveillance camera system, you actually wind up with less elements inside of the lens itself.
Because, well, first off, we're shorter.
Exactly. So with that there, so then what happens is this piece here will actually shift in and out this lens forward and back. The further away... Yep.
That will determine whether you're looking at this or this.
Correct. So what happens here is when you are further away from the sensor at this point, you're going to have a more narrow field of view. And I'm going to draw that next here to show you what that looks like. Now, if you bring yourself closer at that point, you're going to wind up with a much wider field of view. When you're, pardon me, reverse that. When you are further away from, oh, hold on a second. Did I get that wrong? I did get that wrong. That's backwards. When you are closer to the sensor, you have a wider field of view. When you are further away from the sensor, you have a more narrow field of view. And so when you have a more narrow field of view, the light that you're pulling in from that view is all the way out there instead of being right here. So the way that we know how that works is through geometry. It's very simple.
Oh, we were having this discussion the other day.
Yes, we were.
The things that we studied in school that we didn't like.
Exactly. So what we're going to do
here... But you have to use.
Yes, you do. So, and that's kind of what happens with that. So we'll show what that looks like. And it's very simple. And you just need straight lines. So here is, for instance, the back of our eye. We'll use that as our example. We have our lens on the eye as well. You know, there's our lens. Nice.
The cornea.
What will happen... Did you steal my black marker?
Mm-hmm.
I did steal my black marker. When I have this lens closer to the sensor at the back of my eye, from this point here, it's going to pass through the center point of that lens, which would be called the focal point. And that's why this focal point, when you go from the distance from this focal point to the lens itself, and actually this is wrong, the center of the lens should be here. When you go from that focal point here to the actual sensor itself, this distance from this point here to this point here is what's measured. So if you go for an ultra wide at like a 3.5 millimeter lens, you're going to have an extra wide because it's wide out to this point here. So you've got your viewpoint out here. Let's draw a little tree. Something else is going on out there. There you go, a little building of some kind. Okay, so
Why
we're
does
trying
it
to
look
catch
like
all
Lisa Simpson and Angel Wings?
Sure, we'll do it with that. So what we do from there, if we move this lens further out, the math changes, the geometry of it changes. And so what's going to happen instead, we'll draw our lens way out here. So now what happens is the angle of attack is much narrower as it comes out to meet that. So you'll see that you actually are catching less of the image here, but your sensor stays the same size. So the image looks larger at from this point here at this point, but the reality is nothing's really changed other than this focal point.
Well, the biggest change is now whatever your pixel, let's say 1920 by 1080, is only focused on this small area.
Exactly.
So it is much crisper, much cleaner.
Right.
Whereas if we move this back, that 1920 by 1080 is focused on a much larger area.
Right.
So each pixel gets less information.
That's right. Leo, good to see you, bud. Haven't seen you in a while, or you haven't commented in a while. So you are right. The final view of the lens will also change based upon the sensor size of the camera as well. You are 100% correct.
The bigger the sensor, the higher the resolution.
Exactly. So you get higher resolution, but it also requires more input to it or more light to it in some cases. Other cases, you've got a really good sensor and it doesn't take very much light in order for it to operate correctly. So yes, you are very right on that, or you're very correct on that. A larger sensor may not take up more space on the actual die itself. However, it will allow more resolution at that point. So that will also change your focal point as it goes further out, and you'll get a higher resolution picture overall. So let's talk about when to use what kind of lens, or what, let's do this, better yet, what kinds of lenses are out there, especially for surveillance. So we have telephoto lens or the zoom lenses. We also have fixed lenses. We also have autofocus lenses, which all focus on their own, which is using that second set of lenses inside of there. Or we have a varifocal lens. So when you are designing your system, and again, give us a call. We're happy to help out with that. But as you are designing your system, keep in mind of what it is you're actually trying to capture.
How much of it, and does it change?
Exactly. So like Brent was saying before, let's say we are having an entrance to a gated community and they need to capture license plates as well as make and model of a vehicle. So for me, that's going to be two cameras. One for the make and model of the vehicle at the front, and then a second one for the license plate at the back. In most cases, the license plate position doesn't change very often. That's in fact one of the reasons why there are laws and rules for the height of your bumper. In most cases, it's because they want to keep that license plate in one specific spot. Now, they don't tell you exactly it has to be at that one spot, so it does move and it does change. So a PTZ camera is really important for those cases where you have a gated community and you're going to be entering it and you need to track that, that location for the license plate.
However, that does need to be a manned PTZ, not automated.
Correct. And so at that point, as the person pulls up to the window, the person who's manning the window will then take the PTZ controls, move the camera so it focuses in on the license plate, and then the front camera can be a fixed lens or a fixed varifocal, so it doesn't change. It's always the same as they pull up to the window. That way you know the person driving, you can tell the make and model of the vehicle, the color of the vehicle, and everything else. So then at that point, then they drive on, you have now stored the information for that. So that's kind of the use case in that application. But let's say, again, whereas before when we were talking about the coverage or the amount of storage space that you have.
You want to look at your backyard or your front yard or your driveway.
Exactly. The backyard is usually just a big open empty space. And so in that aspect, what you can do is you can have the big open empty space with one camera that has a very wide lens. So you want to look for the smaller number for the focal area. So a 3.5 would be, or pardon me, a 35 would be a very, is that correct? I've got my numbers wrong. But a lower number means you're going to have a wider field of view. A higher number means you're going to have a more narrow field of view. So in the backyard, a wider
Yes.
field of view is better because you're wanting to capture more of that. But if you have the front door and you're trying to catch a more narrow area
With
look
more detail?
with more detail, look for a higher number. Or if you're trying to view something further and further away, a higher number is going to give you further and further distance to view something.
But it's also, the further the way you go and maintain a sharpness, generally you do lose a little bit of clarity up close, even if it's a slightly wider
Correct.
lens. It's a trade-off any way you slice it. That's why there's multiple lens,
Right. And
varifocal, zoom,
exactly.
fixed.
Now, one of the things that is the thing to combat with that, of course, is the focus lens, which brings things into focus instead of being fuzzy. However, in most cases, that focus lens is a secondary lens, and it's not fixed, but it only has it can only move forward and back in so far. So if you get a super far camera, it'll move. A lot of times, it'll move the focus and the zoom lens all the way out, but it won't be able to go. The focus lens won't be able to move back far enough to get something super close. And so you wind up with a really, either, if somebody walks up really close to the camera, it's going to try and focus it. A lot of times if you were to take your phone and you're trying to take a picture of something real close, that's why at that point you may not be able to focus into something that's so very close, because it can't move far enough to the sensor in order to gain that clarity for that.
Now, where you run into this is wanting to put a camera, say, underneath the eave of your house.
Right.
And when you do that, you got the camera located up here. What you're hoping to get is a long distance and a close distance at the same time.
Right.
So, particularly with a fixed camera, you're not going to be as crisp here, and you're not going to be as crisp here, but you'll be good there.
Right.
With a varifocal, you can determine, okay, I want to watch that area or I want to watch this area. There is no perfect lens to do this and this all the time. So you have to look at
Where do you need to be
application.
at? And that's kind of where the autofocus lenses come into play. What the nice thing about the autofocus lenses do is that they will do that. They will automatically focus on whatever is happening there.
in the field of view.
Exactly. So if you do have a larger space like that and it's a distance thing away from the camera or closer to the camera, if you do an autofocus lens instead, as somebody comes into it, as the camera detects that there's something happening there, it will focus in on whatever's happening. And as somebody walks closer and closer, it will continue to focus on that person walking closer and closer, or animal or whatever's happening, car, something like that.
Based on your motion zone.
Exactly. So, really nice setup for that. So, big wide open area, autofocus is great. My personal favorite is using autofocus pretty much everywhere, but I'm kind of lazy when it comes to doing installations because I like to just set it there, kind of get it in the right area and let autofocus take care of it from there. It really cuts down on installation time because you don't have to sit there with a screw, getting it turned in or tweaked just
standing
right.
on the top of the ladder and trying to look at your phone
All at
on
the
a
same
picture
time,
that
or
big
have,
and
have somebody on the phone inside looking at
How's
the,
it look?
how's it look? Go a little bit. Oh, you went too far. Go back the other way. The autofocus cameras are nice for that reason. And again, they are available from us, so definitely go on there, check out those as well. So those are two scenarios. There's many more. We have not talked about different coatings on the lenses. There's UV coatings, there's IR coatings, there's different pieces for that. And that's honestly another topic for another day that we'll touch on later on. But
quick question.
Yeah.
Front door, fixed or varifocus? Or autofocus?
Front door, I'm going to do a fixed because most people are within the correct height or within the same
Agreed.
height. And then at that point, you're going to make sure that no matter what happens when somebody walks up to that door, it's going to be the correct focus. You can see what's happening.
Yeah, I will say I'm a fan of a fixed and auto more than Vera.
Right.
Because it's hard to guess where you're really going to want to see the picture.
Yeah.
With a varifocus.
Yeah, exactly. Now a fixed lens camera, like the ones that come in our kits, the NVR PoE Kit 1, whether it be the 8-channel or the 4-channel, those are fixed lenses. Now, a really good example of this is the screen that you're looking at right now. Where we are standing, we're in focus really well. But if you'll notice that Brent's iPad all the way over here is slightly out of focus. You can see that it kind of loses focus as it moves over there. But the camera's doing a really good job of keeping the things that are here in focus. So what that does is, if you're using a fixed lens, it's essentially what's happening there. In the area where it is picking up the lens there, or pardon me, where it's in focus is where it's going to capture the most action, and that's where you want to make sure the camera is pointed towards. So what you'll want to do is go online, check out the millimeter or the I believe they call it
f-stop.
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 And that's the focal point of the camera itself. So if it's a I can't think if it's 3.5 or 35.
It's 3.5.
3.5. So check that out online
Typically,
as
you're
well.
at f2.8 to.
Right, correct. So check that out. That's going to tell you kind of where the focal point of that lens is going to be, whether it's going to be an extra wide lens or if it's going to be a narrow lens. It'll usually what will happen is there'll be two numbers. There'll be a smaller number, that's the starting point when it's the widest. Then there's a larger number, that's the stopping
And
point on the
when
other
you're
side.
looking at this, depth of field will also vary.
Right.
When you look at a wide angle, your depth of field is actually not very deep because everything looks at about the same distance.
Right.
The tighter the zoom, the more the depth of field, the more you can see distance as it starts to go out of focus. But it's a trade-off. If you need to cover an area, you don't want a tremendous depth of field. You just want to see what's happening.
Exactly. And in most cases, when it comes to surveillance,
That's what you're looking
that's
for.
really what you're looking for. You're looking
Yeah.
for a wide angle, something to do that. Now, in certain circumstances, you may want a more narrow angle. That's usually where the PTZ cameras come into play because those will actually, somebody has taken control of it and they want to look at something specific. So I like the 22 times zoom, again, because you've got the ability to go 22 times all the way in. You want to draw
Switch
something?
over to
Yeah.
that camera.
All right. Oh,
Yeah.
that one?
Yes,
Okay.
number 4,
All right.
I think.
If you're going to do that, you want to be,
Okay,
there you go.
now, that is a fairly tight focus. Now, we are set to autofocus.
Correct, on that camera, yeah.
Yes.
So that's fairly tight.
But
So
you see that if you look at the depth of field on this, when you see there looks like there is
right.
a fair amount of distance between them.
You'll see that the Expo here is slightly out of focus versus this one here.
Now, I'm going to hold these up and switch to our primary camera.
Okay. And we'll go to 1.
You see the depth of field disappears.
Right.
They basically could be,
Yeah. It's a
You
much
lose it.
wider view at that point,
And
and I have the other one zoomed all the
it's
way
the exact same thing with video surveillance. If you need to focus in close like this, you're going to get a much smaller area but a tighter focus.
Right.
But if you get outside of that area, it's going to start to soften.
in. Exactly. And so as you do that, you can bring that in much closer there.
And that's with autofocus.
Right. So we like
And-
to play around with the lenses here. It's always fun.
And we like the toys.
Well, yeah, we're always having fun with that. So any other thoughts for that you might have or questions you might have?
Primarily, if you're setting up, particularly if you're fairly new to video surveillance, give us a call. Let Adam walk through your system design with you.
Yeah.
What we want to know is, what does your building look like? What are your corners? How far you want to go? Is there a fair amount of light? Because that absolutely affects your lens choice as well.
Right. So
The tighter the focus,
Yep.
generally the more light you need.
right. So we work with people all the time with this. In fact, a really good dealer of ours that is over on the West Coast, he will fairly regularly send over a blueprint of what they're working on, and we'll look at it together with that. And again, it's nothing official. It's just us working with you guys to get everything, let us know ahead of time so that we can help out. And we help out by drawing out the different locations for it and talking back and forth about different possibilities. So we're here to help out, especially ahead of time before there is a problem.
Yeah.
It's better to give us a call then. So
Always best up front. And what is your number, young man?
my number is 386-492-8584. And that's our tech support line. That's the best way to get in touch with us there. And my email, of course, is adamr@metrohometheater.com. And then, of course, Brent, your email and phone number as well. You're running out of space.
I am running out of space. I'll move over a little bit.
So we got Brent M@metrohometheater.com.
Yeah, we're not going to.
Yep. And your phone number, 386.
846-7264. Now, I will be honest, don't call me about video surveillance.
Yeah.
Call Adam.
Yeah.
I'm the HDMI guy.
We're happy to help out with that. So
He is much more conversant on the models and the technology employed in those models than I am.
right. So with that said, everybody, thank you so much for checking in with the video with us today. There's a lot of information when it comes to the cameras, and we're going to be touching on those in periodic episodes here from moving forward. And we want to know more about
Speaking
it as
of
well as
periodic
you.
episodes, what's next week's episodes?
Next week we're doing HDMI. Well, we haven't really come up with a title yet, have
Yeah.
we? Basically, when you're out in the field and you have an HDMI problem, we have
What
two
do you
episodes.
use?
Yeah, what do you use? We have 2 episodes next week about that. Wednesday at 3 p.m., we're going to be talking about HDMI repair tools when it comes to like our AIO or our EDID
The repair
blocker.
tools like
Yep.
the Junior 3, the EDIDB.
Yep,
And,
and
then
then
Friday will be getting the most distance out of your video.
Exactly. So you'll be using, we'll talk about our HDM GA1 and GA2, as well as our
Maybe it will
AIO2.
be field operations, field service. I think we called it field repair, which is not a good answer.
Right. But with that, check us out next Wednesday at 3 p.m. and next Friday at 3 p.m. as well, Eastern Time. We'll be talking about HDMI repair or field use or
Making the
however
stuff
it is.
work.
Making it work out there in the field. When there's a problem, what do you do? That's what we're going to
Are you
do.
going to call?
Who are you going to call? Well,
I'm not going to say it.
problem busters, maybe? I don't know.
HDMI busters?
Maybe. So, guys, thank you for checking in with us. As always, let us know if you need anything else. You've got our phone number as well. And if you have any comments or questions, put those down in 6.1% focus, everything else blurs out. 6.0, okay, Leo, you're saying 6.0, everyone is in focus. 1.4 center is focus and everything else blurs out. Now you've got
Okay.
bokeh in that.
Okay, so
What do you think?
let's do a quickie here. Thank you, Leo.
You've got the black over there.
I got
There
the
you go.
black one. So, you got a large 6.0 lens. Pretty much everything it can see is in focus.
Right.
The smaller the lens, only what's in the center is in focus.
Right. There you go.
It's that simple.
There you go.
Thank you, Leo.
Yeah, Leo, we really appreciate that. We're always happy for information on like that. So, with that, everybody, thank you for checking out our
Wait,
episode. Yeah.
what do you do?
Reboot early, reboot often,
And why do we do that?
because troubleshooting, and make sure everything continues to work the way that it should.
It's the little things.
It's the little things.
Oh, we had a good. What was it we were talking about earlier? The little thing.
Oh.
The power one. The power
well,
one.
for-
The guy
for
that
the-
called and got shocked.
Okay, that's actually a good one. We really do need to talk about this. It's a very important aspect that we need to talk about.
It was about video surveillance,
It was
but
about
it
video
wasn't.
surveillance. So the gentleman, he had a camera system that was hooked up in such a way in addition to a house, which was a metal building. And what was happening is periodically a camera would go out. So you get a call from the consumer and say, hey, this camera's out or this number of cameras are out. Come out and take a look at it. So he would go out and look at it. He replaced it once. Then it happened again. However, he said that the consumer had somebody come out to do duct work or to do
Gutters.
gutters. Thank you, to do gutter work.
Metal gutters.
And what would happen is the guys who were doing the installation of the gutters, as they would accidentally touch the gutter to the building and then the gutter to the camera, they would get shocked. So, of course, he calls us up and says, hey, do your cameras ever do stuff like this? And we're like, nope. No, that doesn't. So we talked to him a little bit more, found out what was happening. Turns out the more likely aspect of this is the building itself has a bad ground, which is very important, especially with a metal building. When you have a metal building, the entire building itself is conducting electromagnetic electricity, and it's trying to find the best way to get to
Electromagnetic electricity.
electromagnetic.
It's just carrying. It's just conducting power.
It's conducting power. We'll go with that. So this large metal building is connecting all that power, and it's trying to find a good way to get it to the ground. Well, unfortunately, if the building is not grounded correctly,
Or the power is not the circuit breaker panel.
exactly, what will happen is it will find the closest path to the ground, which in this case was the cameras. So it was burning out his cameras, and it was getting everything to drop down and fall through those cameras. So as the gutter installers were putting it up there and they accidentally touched one of the cameras, it was shocking them, and they were feeling the entire house, which was building up capacitance on the house, and it was now shunting all that power through their gutter, through the camera system, and into the ground.
And them.
So it burned out the cameras at that point. So
Now, we've seen this issue with, I have personal experience with
Yeah.
this both in my house and one of our offsite buildings that we've talked about. In fact, in our power episode.
yes, we did, and we're
Where
going
ground dropped
to
out.
be talking about this stuff again because it is just so important. So in that moment, the thing that we did at that point was we informed them to contact their consumer as soon as possible, or their client as soon as possible, and get an electrician over there immediately, because that's actually can be very dangerous. You don't want that to happen. So if you get a phone call like that that says it's knocking out cameras or whatever it's like that, still give us a call. We want to help out, but be
There's
mindful.
something else.
For that case, there was something else happening. And again, it was the little things. We have the experience of dealing with that in the past, and so we were able to very quickly say that yeah, it more than likely has a problem here. So in those instances, still give us a call. We're happy to help out and point you in the right direction for that. So
I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
We're out of here. Thank you.
We'll see y'all
Have
next
a great
time.
weekend.
Thank you.